Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today we're talking with Paul from the Orion Foundation Instagram page. Paul has been a true inspiration, I think, for me and several of the other young muzzleloading enthusiasts out there, kind of in the contemporary era, being online and seeing people out there doing neat stuff. And what Paul is doing, I think, is really unique and really special for the muzzleloading community. I think he serves a great service to the community at large, bringing people in and showing them that you don't have to focus in on one aspect of muzzleloading to enjoy it. Paul's going to talk a lot about how he works at getting his kids interested and getting their friends interested, and I think he's a true steward of muzzleloading as we consider, just the aging demographics of muzzleloading and how things are changing over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I think what Paul has to say is really important, and I think what he's doing is something that we should all take to heart and, try to learn from so that we can all pass the torch of muzzleloading on to the next generation. So are those camps that you put on, are they pretty formal or are they pretty casual? You just kind of put some signs out and like neighborhood kids come in and camp with you.
Well, I mean, it depends, right? So we have, and this is one of the things I was gonna talk a little bit more about. So I have my I call it my invite list, where if I'm gonna do something, I let certain people know, hey, this weekend we got a camp or whatever, and most of the stuff I do is pretty kid friendly, I would say. And the reason for that is twofold. Is one, I have my daughter is 13 and I have three sons, 11, 8, and I'm sorry, 11, 9, and 7. We're in birthday season, so I can't remember exactly what their ages are because it's changing by the week. But one thing is I want my kids to have the interest that I have. I want them to not be excluded from it, because I've seen people who, uncles who hunting was just their thing and they didn't bring their son with them. And then that son grew up and never did hunting or never was into it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend early on give me the advice of hey, if you can get your kids interested in your hobbies, then you can get your hobbies back, because your kids will want to do them with you.
Okay.
And so what I do is, a lot of the camps I'll have, let my kids come out or whatever. If it's more of what I would call a bushcraft camp, or just I don't even know what the word bushcraft means. When I was, I guess, in my 20s, we would just call it skills camps, where you would just go and you would work on skills. You'd make something or make a shelter or whatever it was. And it wasn't until I read a few different books that I realized that was there was a name for that, what people would call that. Cause I just called it hanging out in the woods.
Yeah. A good weekend.
Right. Yeah. Just doing stuff in the woods, and I had a group of friends that I would do that stuff with. And then, so those events, I just basically, whoever can make it out, I have my set of guys I'm friends with and invite them out. And then a lot of them have kids. So, hey, bring your kid and my kid will be more excited. Or, some of we live out on 30 acres. So, we do a lot of stuff out here. And if the kids do it, that's great. One of the things, my wife's rule is if you're going to have a camp, leave it at camp, because a lot of times they'll wander back to the house or whatever. And the dogs will start barking and stuff. So we try to, so our camp is on the far side of our property. So it's not real convenient to walk back to the house.
Yeah.
But if we're doing an AMM event, an American Mountain Man event, I keep that button down. I have people who are interested, and I don't subscribe to the admonishment that anybody's going to be 100% buttoned down the first time they come out to something. I want them to be excited about it, and the way I see things like that is it's a journey to learn more about it and figure out do they want to do that or not do that. So I have an AMM camp I'm hosting in July also at the same river place I'm going to go to this weekend, but that's all AMM guys and prospects. So we'll be period correct and, camping period style and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the camp this weekend's with my kids and their buddies. So, whatever sleeping bag they have is good.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to bring is good. We're going to work on riflery, and so we'll set up a BB gun shoot where they can we can kind of teach them the fundamentals, and then we'll do, black powder shoot where I have a rifle. You've probably seen it on my Instagram where it's somebody took a CVA Bobcat and cut it down to like a 14-inch barrel and a 9-inch length of pull.
Yeah.
And every one of my kids has learned on that gun.
Oh, that's great.
It's because it's their size, and I've had all my cousins and nephews and nieces come out, and we show them what to do, and of course load everything down for them so that it's like a half charge or a quarter charge, or the way my dad describes it is just enough powder to roll the ball out of the barrel. So they can have that experience and have it be a positive experience. But yeah, that's kind of how we do it. And, I have friends I've met through Instagram who, my wife jokes, those are my friends I met on the internet.
Yeah. Yep.
Who we've met in real life, and, realize somebody's in the same area as you, and, invite them out and have them come camp with us. And that's been great. Everything's worked out pretty good.
Man, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, man, it's kind of a bummer in a way, because you meet somebody that you're like, oh man, it'd be great to hang out. Like there's this guy, Mountain Folk Mike. I don't know if you know him or you've seen him on Instagram. He does a lot of archery stuff, and he's out in California. He's super, super cool guy. He has some really neat archery, bow and arrow shoots. And he told me the other day, he's like, God, man, I wish we lived closer, because it'd would be great to get together and, do a woods walk or something. So, I try to put feelers out and figure where people are. We'd like to do a lot of road trips. So hopefully we can, meet up with some people at different points.
Yeah. I think that's the great thing about the internet is there's so many like-minded people that you can connect with.
Absolutely.
Until you realize the geographic barriers.
Yeah.
I joke that sometimes I could be out, I could almost be out every weekend, driving around and going to a different shoot, and I probably wouldn't care a whole lot until I was in my 40s or something.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of jump into some of the questions, you're talking about these camps and things. How did you get started in muzzleloading and camping and bushcraft? You do so many different things. I guess really to get started, who are you and what are you interested in?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, Paul, I've always been an outdoors guy. I grew up. I'm a city kid. I didn't grow up out in the woods, like doing all the Daniel Boone stuff. But I had a dad that was really into the outdoors and really into, I guess, what you would call like survivally kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough that I grew up kind of in like what I would call like one of the heydays of black powder and muzzleloading. So I was a kid in the early 80s, and I still have these very, very vivid memories of going camping with my dad and his buddies, and everybody had muzzleloaders. And it was just a thing, and I even asked him, later on, I was like, am I misremembering this, or did I really remember that like everybody had, muzzleloaders when I was a kid? And he's like, oh no, we did. That was a big thing. So I was born in 76, and
That's
I probably went on. Yeah. Right. How's that for notable? And I probably went on my first camp with my dad when I was probably about 3.
Oh, wow.
And there's a picture on the wall at my parents' house of me shooting a Philadelphia Derringer, the 44,
yep.
Jucar, CVA, whatever you want to call it, Derringer. And I think I was 3 years old, and that was the first black powder gun I ever shot. And of course, in that picture, I have a backpack my mom made for me with patches on it, with a sword tied to the side of it and a coonskin cap on. So if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what is. But no, I remember so much from these camps, and, my dad would have these friends he would hang out with, and they would, make fires and, make spears and shoot black powder guns and cast ball. And so, so that was a thing that I was a part of when I was younger. My dad never did any of the, buckskinning or rendezvous or that kind of stuff. But he had these friends that he would go on these camps with. And I think, I don't know whether it was like my mom trying to get us out of the house or whatever it was, but he always would let me come with him. And I remember in a lot of those, I was like the only kid that was there. So I kind of see that as unique, that he would bring me with him on these adventures.
Yeah.
And when I was, asked him later, I said, well, gosh, what happened? Why did everybody have black powder guns then? And then growing up, people didn't. And he said, well, you got to remember the time. This was like, late 70s, early 80s. Everybody was into Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah.
That was super popular movie. And I mean, and still you go to a lot of mountain man events, and a lot of guys that are his age, that's what kind of got them into the hobby, was
Definitely,
that experience. I mean, and still even us, quote, younger guys. I mean, we quote that movie all the time.
Yeah.
I always joke with my wife that, three of my sons were a hair's breadth away from being named Jeremiah. But yeah. And I asked him, I said, well, why did people get out of it? And he said, well, they just, the cleaning or the maintenance or whatever. And, some people that are just into hunting are just into hunting. But as I grew up, I got more into modern stuff. We always shot a bunch of, military surplus guns, World War II stuff, World War I stuff. My dad's big passion was guns from the Civil War time. And so he was always, so we always shot a lot of that, stuff too. And then, like any other kid, when I got into like middle school, high school, I was more into, semi-autos and, whatever was, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, when I got into college, I got real nostalgic for, growing up shooting with my dad and grandpa and everything. And I found, Backwoodsman magazine.
Oh yeah.
And started, this is probably like 94, 95, 96, somewhere in there. And I started reading Backwoodsman, and I was like, man, this is really cool. I grew up shooting these things. I should try to get back into this. This is a neat, like a neat hobby. And I had a roommate in college who he grew up shooting black powder. So he and I started shooting again and kind of like rediscovering it. And I got I never shot flintlocks growing up. I only shot percussion. And I read an article in Backwoodsman about like the perfect survival gun. And the guy was making the case that a flintlock musket was the perfect survival gun.
Yep.
You can make the powder and it shoots with rocks, because the flint, and you can, cast ball and, shoot rocks, or nails out of it or whatever it was. And I just thought that was the coolest damn thing. So I had to get a flintlock at that point. And I remember I was at a gun show, and I found a 50 caliber Thompson Center Hawken that was a flintlock. And I just jumped in like both feet, got all into it, really got into shooting that. And, just kind of grew from there, and, started hunting more with black powder guns, shooting black powder guns more. And then when I was, there was a place, I was living in Austin at the time, and there was like, everybody's got in their town, like the one place that sells black powder. And I found so I would, buy my black powder there, or, ball or whatever. Of course, grew up casting balls. So, would do that with my dad, whenever we had a chance. And I found the book of buckskinning at a used bookstore. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Humans do this hobby. Like,
yeah.
How is this a thing I've never heard of?
There are more of people like me.
Yeah. And gosh, and ironically, probably 5 years after that, I was going through my dad's library, because we're always borrowing books from each other and stuff. And he had a copy of the book of buckskinning. And I was like, Dad, how long have you had these? He's like, oh, I've had this since you were a kid. And I never knew, like, I never saw it or whatever. So it was one of those things. It was just like perfect timing. And and so I was shooting at that, or was getting my supplies at that gun store. And somebody had put a little ad on the wall that said, hey, are you interested in buckskinning and mountain man stuff? And I was like, holy cow, that's that thing in the book that I read about. So I gave that a call. I gave the guy a call and talked to him about it. And that's how I got into rendezvousing. So I was like 2000. Called this guy up and ended up, starting to go out to rendezvous and mountain man events and that kind of stuff. And man, I was hooked once because it was kind of everything at once. It was all the wood stuff, camping, which I've always been into. I was a backpacking guide in college and, camped my whole life and everything. And so that was something that just kind of tied it all together. And so that's really kind of how I got into muzzleloaders and black powder and that kind of thing.
That's fantastic. I love asking everybody that I meet, in muzzleloading especially, like how'd you get into it? Because for me, it's a real family affair going back a couple generations. So it's real normal for me, but everybody's got a different story, and I love hearing that every time. There's always something new.
Yeah, I had a real like I call it like a milestone moment in my life, because my dad never shot flintlocks. He only shot percussion guns, and specifically And I remember I was at an AMM camp at the, I wanted to host an event at the, I guess the land I grew up hunting on, because the guy was going to sell it. And I was like, okay, I got to do something, I got to do an event here. So I have this great memory of this place, before he sells it. So I ended up hosting a AMM event down there with my my AMM group. And my dad came out because it was, the land we hunted on, everything. And I remember hearing him talk to, this guy, and he's looking at his rifles because, my dad's, we've always been real into black powder guns and stuff. He's like, oh yeah, I don't shoot, I don't shoot flintlocks. I only shoot percussion. Kind of like hurt my feelings a little bit because I was like, oh man. But just a few years ago, my mom's an antique dealer, so they always come across some neat stuff. And I was making a trade with my dad for something and trying to figure out something that I could trade him for. And I had a Harper's Ferry 1803 rifle, and I was like, hey, I'll trade you the for the Harper's Ferry, because he had his eye on it, and that was his first flintlock. So probably shooting percussion his whole life. And now he's all into flintlock. So that was I feel like I saved him, like towards the in the twilight years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So that was really cool. But yeah, it's been something I've kind of always been into.
Yeah, and you've taken it. I mean, where we connected, for anybody listening, is really on Instagram. I mean, you run the Orion Foundation Instagram page, which is just incredible. It seems like you're always doing something, and you're into so much. I mean, it's not just muzzleloaders. It's not just backpacking, bushcrafting, kind of survival stuff. You've just made this, what I see as kind of a whole new genre that just makes it all look so much fun and so cool. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, let me tell you kind of how I started that, and kind of the weird journey it's gone on. So I've always been a gear nerd, like love gear, love military surplus gear, love and like I said, I was a backpacking guide in college and really nerded out on lightweight backpacking, and just now getting back into that with my kids and everything. And so what I would do. So we do a lot of road trips, my wife and I, and did this before the kids, and then after the kids too, and everything, or they come with us. And I've always been really into gear and love to see what other people are doing with gear. And I remember we were at the Rocky Mountain National Park, probably 2005, 2006, something like that. And there's a guy coming the other way down the trail, and he's got this cool backpack that I'd never seen before. And my wife's like, oh man, he's gonna talk to him about the backpack or whatever. And and sure enough, start talking to this guy and where his pack's from. He got it in Wyoming, and it's like this one-off thing. And what I've realized is, like, gear enthusiasts love other gear enthusiasts. So I have this thing where I'll be somewhere and I'll tell my wife, like, I'm going to talk to that guy about his his backpack or whatever. And she's like, oh man. And then we walk away. We're like best friends, because it's like, oh man, you bonded on it or whatever. And I also I drive a Land Cruiser. I'm a big Land Cruiser enthusiast. I have an FJ60, my older Land Cruiser, and then I have a 100 series as well too, which is my newer car, in quotes, from the year 2000. Right, that's about as new as I can get. But in these circles, there's all these different like gear enthusiasts, and so what I would do is, if I saw somebody that had a cool bag, I would take a picture of it. And I'd be like, oh man, I really like your bag, or oh, I really like your setup, or I really like your rig, or tell me about your trailer, and take pictures of it. And so my wife just thought that was the most embarrassing thing. And so what I started doing was, I was like, you know what? I want to catalog these somewhere. I'm going to start putting this on Instagram. And these pictures I take of, people in their gear and their setups, well, then you find other people that are also, into the gear or into the setups or rigs or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've gone to these different places, like, gun shows out of state, overland, an overland show in Fredericksburg. And I run into people and they're like, oh, I know you. You're the guy from, I recognize your whatever. And I'm like, oh, I know you. I recognize your Land Cruiser, and it's cool. And I like make friends with these people. And like you said, they're fellow enthusiasts. And so I was doing that for a while. And if you go, and I've never deleted anything from Instagram, so you can go back like to the beginning, and it's just like, backpacks and cool rigs. And I still do that whenever I see somebody's setup that I like or whatever. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, man, I really, I'm super passionate about black powder stuff. I'm super passionate about muzzle loaders. It's probably, it's hard for me to ever like pick and say what's the main thing I'm into, but it's probably the main thing I'm into, because I feel like, I'm definitely a weapons enthusiast, but there's something about muzzle loaders that I've always just been, I don't know, maybe it's my childhood or, nostalgia with, hanging out with my dad, my grandpa and everything. And so I was thinking like, how can I integrate this and make this part of the scene? Well, I have a lot of friends who are, AMM guys or buckskinners. And I really was kind of like, well, I can't really make this an AMM thing because it's not period correct. And, it's, you get the person who's like, oh, it's the wrong blanket or that's the wrong whatever. And, and I get it, and I appreciate people who, who know their stuff and do it that way.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about it, and I was like, God, what if I just combine all this stuff together? How weird would that be if it's modern gear, but muzzle loaders, or it's, Vietnam era webbing with like a tomahawk, or it's, and really what it is, it's just kind of me combining like all the stuff I like into one thing. And it's been so crazy because I've met so many great people through Instagram who are like, hey man, I saw your page and I think it's neat. And, I really want to get into muzzleloading, but I don't know where to start. And I'm like, oh man, check this out or do this. And man, I've probably sent like lead balls, like all over the country, getting people, and they're like, well, how can I pay you back? And I'm like, oh, just take it, pass it on to the next guy or whatever. Because the more, it's always like, I feel like if you have a hobby that's a weird hobby, you really don't help anything by keeping it to yourself, and the more enthusiasts you make, the more people that are out there. And man, I've just met so many cool people that are, that are into stuff like, I love, I guess you call it like post World War II webbing, which is kind of a weird niche thing. And, kind of before nylon and everybody kind of, started standardizing a little bit. Yeah. And there's people out there that's their jam and that's what they're into. And so I'll, my wife calls it nerding out. So I'll nerd out with those guys about like, different things. And, it's just, it kind of became a way for me to like show all these, different things and kind of tie it all together in a way that I wasn't really seeing anybody, do that before. But trying to be really positive and really trying to like encourage other people to like, get out and do it as well too. Yeah. So that's kind of been my jam. And it seems like, it's been a lot of fun doing it for sure.
Well, that's fantastic. I love kind of getting the story behind it. Yeah. Because it not in a bad way, but it does seem like a mishmash of a bunch of different, really cool things that I've never seen put together before, but it totally works.
Yeah. And I think, part of my angle on it was there's an exclusivity with certain hobbies where, like I remember like I said, I used to do a lot of backpacking when I was younger and you'd meet people who were just climbers, like they just did rock climbing. I used to do a lot of rock climbing too, but it was like, they just wanted to do rock climbing. And if you just did rock climbing, you were cool. But if you did rock climbing and backpacking and you were kind of, it's spread too thin, and I've always been a dude who's like been into a lot of stuff, like I can't like, I'll meet people who, like, oh, I'm about to retire and, I don't have any hobbies. So I don't know what to do. And I'm like, dude, let me lend you one of my hobbies and you can write me a report every week so I can experience that through you. Like I found, like I was at some, my wife and I love little festivals and stuff, like where you kind of have a little town has their, strawberry festival or whatever it is. And I figured out there's people who do chuck wagon cooking as their hobby. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, man, this is great. So I joined the American Chuck Wagon Association, and I'm like, this is my retirement hobby. So I'm learning about it now. So when I'm retired, I can get into that too.
You're gonna ride around in your chuck wagon and feed people and eat. Yeah. That sounds like a good deal, man.
Right? Exactly. Food, history, the Old West. Like, what more could you want?
Wow, man, you've got it figured out. I need to start like, I need you to send me a report of how I can live a life like yours, because this sounds great.
Oh, geez. Oh, yeah. That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Hey folks, Ethan here, and I just wanted to take a quick side note and talk about something I just got in the mail this week, which I'm pretty excited about. I picked up a CVA Acura LR over the winter from muzzleloaders.com, and now that the weather's finally nice enough here in northern Indiana, I can take this out and start shooting. And to do that, I've picked up a pack of Thor bullets. Thor bullets are a premium full-bore muzzleloader bullet, and before you can order a pack like this one that you can hear here, you need to go through and get a sizing pack. It's really easy, it's really convenient, and in the end of it, I think the real deal out of the sizing packs is you get a super nice pre-measured charge tube that you can use later down the line on your hunts or going out, to shoot at the range, so you can pre-measure whatever powder that you're using. My CVA Acura LRV2 actually measured out to be at the bore diameter of 50 caliber. So I picked up the 50 caliber diameter bullets here. These are 247 grains. There's a nice little pamphlet inside here that gives you the muzzle velocities at different powder charges, primarily here for Pyrodex, which is widely available, so that's really nice. But it gives you a ton of ballistics information for 50 yards all the way out to 300 yards with the corresponding FPS, energy, path, drop, drift, time, and adjustment for a scope. So this is really interesting, and I'm really excited to get these out to the line and start kind of tinkering with them. So if you're interested with Thor bullets, they're not a sponsor of the show. They're just a company that I've enjoyed working with in the past, and it's been exciting to kind of get into the inline game and be able to reach out and ask any questions that I have to Jeff Clemens there at Thor Bullets. So I'd like to thank Jeff Clemens for being such a supporter of muzzleloading. Back to the show.
But we like I mentioned earlier, we're my wife and I, like our main hobby together is probably homesteading. So we got 30 acres that we live on, and we do chickens and goats and gardening, and we mainly as we put it, if we had to live off what we grew, we'd probably die. But we feed a lot of deer, and we feed a lot of grasshoppers, it seems like, and the chickens do their part to decimate things. But we live out on this place, and the reason, part of the reason why we got it is, my wife really got into buck skinning and rendezvousing, that hobby as well too. And so we're like, gosh, if we had our own place where we could do that, how cool would that be? And so that's where a lot of the stuff takes place, is out here. We do a lot of, like I said, we do a lot of road trips. So, some stuff goes on the road, but yeah, a lot of the camps and hikes and, that kind of thing is just basically walking out into our woods. So we get, so it is easy to get a lot done when you're that close to it.
Yeah, for sure. What's it like? This isn't really on the question list, but what's it like, being so active and having so many hobbies, and then raising what seems like a ton of kids to go along with it?
Well, I think part of it is like, my wife and I are both really active. Like we don't do a lot of sitting around, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we, a lot of hiking, a lot of working outside. We're both really into, I guess, like, it's kind of funny to say. So in real life, I have a very technical job. And so my escape from that is that we do a lot of like just kind of hard work, I guess, on the weekends, working in the gardens and all that kind of thing. And we were laughing about, a camping trip we were on recently. Like, my gosh, nothing we do is easy. Because even if we do like a camping trip, you're hauling like, I used to make fun of all the people who would, bring the trailer to rendezvous, because, man, look at all the stuff those guys are bringing. And, we can pack it in a couple of pack baskets. But I tell you what, man, 4 kids later, we're doing the trailer, and it's a trailer full of stuff. It's just crazy how that, everything I've ever made fun of has like come back on me for sure. But yeah, it's just trying to be active and trying to, gosh, part of it is just trying to fight the screen life, right? That's such a pull for kids now to just sit down and stare at a screen. And, I encourage my sons, just like any other kids, love playing video games and doing that kind of stuff. But I force them to build stuff in real life, because I don't want them to have their whole like experience with, construction is just like Minecraft and like, pressing a button and making stuff happen. So, there's forts all through our woods that, they built on, and anything. And I've tried to really make it where anything that they want to do that I'm like, 100% behind it. Like if they
Yeah.
want to like dig and, like, hey, we're going to find buried treasure. I'm like, all right, I'm all in. Where are we digging? And just doing whatever, to just make that exciting and to really kind of have that, have them have that like outdoors adventure mentality and want to do those kind of things. In fact, we, I have a friend of mine who was talking to me one day and he was like, yeah, I really want to get my son involved in scouts, but, I don't feel like they do enough, camping now. And I really wish that there was a group that was, more of like, and his words were how to kill a bear with a Bowie knife. And I was like, that's pretty cool, man. And so I started thinking about it. And in like a week, I wrote up a 40-page curriculum for a kind of scout-like organization that's all based on the Mountain Men and the Mountain Men history.
Oh man.
And we call it the Green River Boys. And it's so far we also homeschool our kids. Again, we don't do anything easy.
No, that's great.
And so it's basically my sons and all their buddies. And then I swear every time we have an event, there's 2 more kids that show up because everybody like, well, we got to bring so-and-so because so-and-so would love this. And what we do is we, it's again, like there's something for everybody, right? And I'm not like trying to take away from the scouts or trail life or anything anybody else wants to do. But what I really wanted to do was have it be a, Christian centered group, right? So we pray in and pray out.
Yeah.
But have it focused on kind of the story of the Mountain Men. And so every gathering, we call it, we do a Bible story, and then we do a Mountain Man story. So we talk about, Hugh Glass and, his fortitude in fighting, with the grizzly bear. We talk about, what I'm trying to think of another guy off the top of my head. My mind's gone blank, but I have all the different journals from the different Mountain Men, Osborne Russell, his story, all the different guys. And so I'll extract something from that and I'll put it into a kid version of it to teach them, something about, being strong or being brave or whatever it is. And then we'll have a skill that we focus on. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to have it be something that was narrow but deep instead of shallow but wide. Because I kind of feel like, a lot of organizations, you talk on your ham radio, talk on grandpa's ham radio, and now you got the radio merit badge or whatever. And so what our goal is, we want to have these kids understand these skills to the point that they can teach it to someone else. And so we focus on, we have 12 skills we focus on, fire starting, shelter building, first aid, riflery, tomahawk, knife, archery and atlatl, trapping, hunting, wood stalking, creating caches, and wilderness survival. And the idea is that each one of these events, they get together with their friends, and we could probably make it go for about an hour, and then by then they kind of lost interest or they're up in a tree or whatever it is. But it's been pretty successful. And so the pictures you see on Instagram where there's the group of kids, that's what we're doing. So we've done 5 of those events, and they've gone great, and the kids love it and they're super enthusiastic about it. And this weekend will be our second camp out. So we did one on our place in the fall, and then we're going to do one this weekend on the river. So it's been pretty cool. Now my selfish motivation is my kids are going to be more engaged if their friends are there too. Yeah. So I figure, hey, why not? If that's what helps get them interested, then, hey, it's worth it. And, I do a thing with my camping where I do, I camp in every season. So one of the, requirements to get in the AMM is you have to camp in every season of the year. And ever since I've been in the AMM, I've kept doing that every year, no matter what, kids, craziness, always make sure I'm doing at least one pack in a season. Mm-hmm. And so what I've done now is try to do the same thing with that group to let them experience that as well too. So they can see, hey, what works in the winter, maybe doesn't work in the fall, or I got to, be more thoughtful about how I make my bedroll, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been great. And it's really got them interested in it. And again, for me, it's like any excuse I can have to get outside and, play around with gear and, sit across a campfire with some people. It's worthwhile.
Man, that is just so stinking heartwarming. I mean, just everything about that dude is just, I mean, that just sounds like, not to get preachy, but that just kind of seems like the kind of thing that people need right now,
That was part of it, man. And I think, people that we in our area have really responded to it. My goal with that is to get it ready, get it working, and I put together like a syllabus for each gathering and that kind of thing. And then just put it out for free and let anybody who can use it. I have a website. It's not set up yet at greenriverboys.org. And I'm going to put everything out there and then just basically encourage, any other dads who want to do the same thing to take all the stuff and make it their own, so can help guide them and help them do the same thing where they are.
Man, that's great. I want you to let me know when that goes live, because I'm going to definitely bookmark that for my own use down the road, but also, just kind of try to share that around so other people
absolutely.
out there can hear about this, because this is fantastic.
Well, and again, man, just trying to encourage, trying to encourage people that are, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of badness out there now, and there's a lot of, negativity, and this is something that, it's been good. It's been good how we've done it. And I'm hoping, and we refine it every time, right? Every time we go out and do a gathering and, add some more notes or try something else out. And, and then I got a pretty serious audience who lets me know whether it's good or not. They always do, okay, what'd you guys like, or what was good or what was bad? And, and it's been really cool. And now we're to the point where at the start of every gathering, like, okay, who wants to start a fire? And, they're, oh, me. And everybody goes and gets their cedar up and makes a bird nest and gets their flint and steel and strikes it and gets it going. And what's been really neat too, is we're pretty active with, the rendezvous out where we are.
Yeah.
And what I've explained to these kids is like, look, if you guys get buttoned down with your skills, you can go to rendezvous and win a prize. You can win. And they've come back with, bows and arrows and, all kinds of cool stuff. And it's something it's a very good way to kind of validate that with them and show them that, hey, you can take these things, put them on a trade blanket at rendezvous and make some money, or you can trade up to something else, or you can, do great in the kids competition, and they've really kind of taken off with that. So it's been really kind of cool to see that happen.
I just love how, I mean, as a young, I'm 27, and having just grown up in muzzleloading, I mean, that's the number one thing I hear about, is how young people aren't interested, or how they're, everybody's getting old, the sport's dying, it's not going to be around very long. But you've just taken it upon yourself, and you're saying, look, this is not the case, and I'm going to prove it,
Yeah.
And you've set this up, and you're actively, passing this along to future generations. I mean, I can't commend you enough for that, man. That's just so cool.
Well, dude, well, part of it, man, was that podcast you did with the GoX people,
Yeah.
And I was listening to you, I was listening to you guys talk, and I was listening to the GoX people talk, or I guess it was it Deer Creek products?
No,
it was Deer Creek and GoX.
Yeah.
And which was great too, because man, I have an old ASM Dragoon pistol that I couldn't find the parts for. So after I heard that podcast, I got, I called him up and was able to get my Model 3 Dragoon working again. So
that's great.
So I got multiple things out of that podcast. No, man, but that's one of the things that like it really hit me, was listening to, everybody talk, and I remember like when I was a kid how cool of a thing that was, and like what a neat thing it was to be a part of that. And I was like, man, I got to get moving on this quick, because, I only have a few years before my kids don't think I'm cool anymore.
Yeah.
I gotta instill this with them. And I think that it's been great to have them be a part of that, and then take that to rendezvous and get to see other people that they think are cool and see what they're doing. And, oh yeah, we can do this too. So no, man, I was really inspired by that conversation that you guys had as well too. So that inspiration goes both ways, man, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I really felt charged by that. I got to figure out, what is my part in this that I can do to keep this, this hobby and this tradition going. So yeah, man, I'm just glad to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So does that, when you're talking about kind of the rendezvous scene out there, does that kind of lead into like your website, buckskinning.org then?
Yeah. So yeah, let me tell you about that. So when I so like I said, I went to my first rendezvous in May of 2000, and actually in the most recent move I've had, I found that old flyer from that event and framed it and put it on the wall. I put it on the wall in my office because I just thought that was such a cool thing. So I got into buckskinning around 2000, and again, it just kind of reawoken or woke up all of this kind of nostalgia and, you know, all the cool stuff I felt like I did with my dad growing up and everything. And I really was kind of I would say at the apex of like lightweight camping, lightweight backpacking at that point. And I just kind of turned my back on it all and went full guns into, you know, buckskinning and that kind of thing. And when I want to say January of that year, I called the guy who had the flyer on the wall at the gun store and basically said, you know, hey, I want to do this thing. And he said, well, you know, come out, there's an event in 2 weeks. And I said, well, I can't come in 2 weeks. I got to be ready for it. and so I like, you know, I found another book called Buckskins and Black Powder, which is out of print, but man, that book is I have 2 copies of it. One of them's my copy and one of them's my loaner copy I give to people who I try to convert into buckskinning. I'm like, you got to read this. This is the way to do it. So I basically read that book and showed up to an event based on that book, you know, and was like, you know, and I walked in and walked into the event. I remember I was looking around and at the time I didn't know what to expect. So I had some backpacking meals in my car and a sleeping bag in my car. And I looked into some different camps, and finally there's this guy looked up and he said, hey, who are you looking for? And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, well, who do you know? And I was like, I don't know anybody. And he's like, well, brother, come over here. And that was my buddy Ken. And he was the guy that kind of brought me into the hobby and everything. And man, I just loved it. I just thought this is the best thing ever. You know, the revelry, the, you know, camaraderie, you know, shooting black powder guns, living like a savage in the woods. I mean, it was everything, you know, everything I ever wanted. And so at the time, you know, my like real career, I do digital stuff. So, you know, content, websites, mobile apps, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so at the time, it's probably like, gosh, 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. I think probably 2002. I was explaining to people about this weird hobby that I did. And so I ended up putting buckskinning.org together to explain to people what that hobby was. Yeah. And so that instead of having to explain all the time, I said, well, just go to my website, buckskinning.org. Just go to my website, buckskinning.org. And I would use that as a way to, like, you know, explain to people what the hobby's about, you know, what you need, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, man, I've met so many people through there, just, you know, people shooting me emails about something, or, hey, I got this thing to sell, or, hey, I'm looking for an event, or I'm looking for somebody, you know, something near me or whatever. And yeah, that's what it kind of started as, was just a way for me to explain to the people that I worked with at the time what this weird hobby was that I had. And and here's what I'm doing on the weekends. This is where it was. And, you know, in a way, you know, I try to keep it up to date. Like, I put local events on there and stuff, and, you know, I'll do blog posts or update articles, but I definitely need to spend some more time on rewriting. And I just got, you know, so many irons and so many fires, but it's a labor of love for sure. I've met a lot of great people through that site. It's funny. I got a guy I work with who does a lot of, I guess you would call it like outdoor industry stuff. Yeah. So he does a lot of like content and those kind of things. And he was like, you know, he was one of the guys that was kind of one of my early what do you call it, supporters on Instagram. And he's like, oh man, I really like your vibe and everything. And he said, yeah, it's so crazy. He said, all the stuff that, he's like, the outdoor industry, man, everybody hates each other and they're mean. And, you know, if somebody's got like a cooler that's not that cooler, then they're, you know, saying, oh, your cooler sucks or whatever. And he's like, man, every comment I see with you guys, it's like, oh man, I love your thing. And, oh, that's great. And, oh, you're doing so good. And, oh man, and it's like, you guys are so damn positive. And I was like, yeah, man, that's how you keep the vibe going. Yeah. You know, is you gotta, you know, find people that are like-minded and cheer them on, you know, and keep people interested and keep people inspired, you know? Yeah. That's one of the coolest things about it.
I took my wife down to a little camp. We just went down for the day because we were busy here in Indiana with Eli Froge on Instagram there. He puts on that little camp in his woods, and it was just so nice. I think that was the first event that we'd been to probably pretty much since like last year, with
Yeah.
winter and everything.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
I mean, within 15 minutes of being there, she was out in the dugout canoe going down the river. It was kind of
Oh, that's great,
one
man.
of her first
Yeah.
events, in a long time. And she was just,
Yeah.
I mean, she was in kind of, we were in modern dress. I was in jeans and she was in a dress. And I mean,
Yeah.
they just took her out and, just
Oh,
treated her
yeah.
like a real lady.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
just great.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah. I remember so when my wife and I, we've known each other since we were in high school, but got together kind of after college.
Uh-huh.
And, I remember, I probably did buckskinning for maybe a year and a half before she came out. And I always joke that like, when I went by myself, I knew like one guy, it was like the one camp. I knew the one dude. She came out one weekend and then suddenly I knew everyone, everyone who was out there. She was kind of my social director for the event. But, yeah, it was neat, man. We did our first, kind of post lockdown ish, big rendezvous last October. And man, if you had any like people that you were on the fence about, or, maybe you didn't get along or whatever, man, everybody was so excited to see each other and so like, cheered up, and it was just great, man. It was one of the coolest events I've ever gone to. It felt like a real rendezvous where everybody like, hadn't seen each other for years, and everybody's back again. And man, it was just fantastic.
Yeah. There's definitely a different feel, I think, coming out to events now. Like I've seen other people kind of sharing that same sentiment across the country, getting out and going to camps and things. And just, it's a real breath of fresh air, I think, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Well, dude, absolutely. And I think a lot of things, it's like, man, how many events did I take for granted and not go to?
Exactly.
Because, I'm too busy, or I got something going on. Man, I'll tell you, we're never missing anything from here on out.
Every weekend
like
in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, we're hitting all the stuff.
So, I mean, I'm obviously really familiar with muzzleloading events kind of in the eastern half of the country. So you've talked about some of the rendezvous and things. Is there anything else you want to talk about the muzzleloading scene in Texas?
Sure. Well, one of the things we suffer from here in Texas, and I think, I have some friends from back east. One of my camping partners for a long time was up in the Northeast, and we suffer from distance, right? Because where we are, I remember so when I got married, my bachelor party was a hog hunt, and I got my friends together, and it was 3 hours away from where I lived, and all the guys who I grew up with in Texas, they were like, okay, great, I'll meet you there. And then my friends who were from like Pennsylvania and stuff, they were like, well, you're driving 3 hours to go do something? Like, is there not something closer? Like, why would you drive that far? And so that's the thing, is like, we're so spread out because the state is so big that it's more like there's regional events versus Texas events, right? So like there's different groups that are in different areas. And so, we have our home rendezvous group, I guess we would call, is the Texas Association of Buckskinners. And that's the group I first ran into back in 2000. That's kind of my family rendezvous group. Love those people. And so, we'll go out of our way to go to those events. But we usually end up driving. It's, a short distance is probably 4 hours to get there. And, what we've kind of had to kind of come to an understanding is that that's normal for a weekend event. And so, but I know that probably prevents people from going, because for a lot of people, driving 4 hours, my gosh, let's be reasonable, right? Taking 1 day to pack, because it takes a day, because we got 6 humans we're outfitting with gear. Usually we're bringing a few friends. So it's more 8 to 10 is probably more likely. So it takes us a whole day. I feel like with these kids, the shirt that they fit last year doesn't fit them now. Right. So we're, constantly like shuffling outfits and stuff. So that takes a day. Then packing, that takes at least, I think 3 hours is our like quickest time ever. And then, driving 4 hours. So it's a pretty big, that's a pretty big time commitment. And a lot of what I found is, getting that person to that first rendezvous, you have to do all that to make it as easy as possible, to not, scare them away or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but we're pretty committed to that. We try to hit Southwestern whenever we can, Southwest Regional Rendezvous, which is, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas. We were going to go to Arkansas this year, but we always have a problem with people watching the place just because, of all the animals and everything.
Yeah.
But we try to hit the Southwesterns. Of course, those are the ones the kids like the most because that has the most vendors and there's horses there and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we were at Southwestern in 2013 or 2014, I think it was. And, just got our camp set up. And some of the AMM guys came, riding through camp. Well, they recognized me and, turned on their heels. Well, the kids ran out and they just reached down and scooped the kids up and put them on those horses and paraded them through camp. So forever in their mind, that's the best event ever is Southwestern. So we try to hit those when we can. October. So I guess it was January this year. I found out about the Wooler Rock Traders Rendezvous in Oklahoma.
Yep.
So my dad and I were like, man, we got to hit that up. So we made the trek up there in April. And I think next year we're going to try to start hitting some of the Rocky Mountain rendezvous because, we just want to be able to do that. And then, of course, Friendship in Indiana, that's on our list. We got to, now that the kids are bigger, we want to head out there and do that. But yeah, that's the thing is, we are geographically limited because of how far you can drive on a weekend. I've hosted events where people have driven 12 hours to get there, and man, I love their tenacity, but I'm not quite there yet.
Maybe when the kids are grown.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be our empty nester plan. There's some folks out here that put on some pretty good shoots. But honestly, man, ever since we've been out on this place, we do most of our shooting out here, because we'll try to, we'll shoot black powder when we can. Always got, like I said, always have some relatives that'll want to come out and try it out. Getting the kids ready for rendezvous so they can, shoot in the kid competition and that kind of thing. So we don't do as much of the local, like I would say, like muzzleloader shoots. But we definitely try to hit any rendezvous that's within like 4 or 5 hours. We always try to hit those.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we are going to try to do that I'm really excited about, and I don't know how this is going to come together, but I've heard that there's some of the Rocky Mountain groups are going to start doing the 200th anniversary rendezvous. So that's going to be, to represent the rendezvous period from 1825 to 1840.
Oh, fantastic!
They're going to try to do a rendezvous every year in the location of the original rendezvous.
Oh, cool.
And I've pre-warned my family that's in our future.
You're signed up, buckle up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But, but honestly, man, like of all the events, the private camps are my favorite, you know. I love having, that's why I really like the AMM stuff. I like the intimate group with 4 or 5 folks and hanging out over a campfire, cooking, having conversations, that kind of thing. And so, usually what I try to do is anytime I host, those events, I'll try to bring, as many people as are interested in coming out. Usually ends up being around 4 or 5. And those have always been kind of my favorite. If it's AMM related, try to keep it primitive. If it's not a specific AMM event, then I kind of do what's probably used kind of more of a mashup event where, I'll wear buckskins and, use all my primitive stuff and then have people, come out and bring whatever they can just to get them to kind of check that out and kind of get a feel for it. Just trying to be as open as possible so we can, introduce more people into that and into that kind of stuff.
That's fantastic. So, we're coming up on the hour and I don't want to keep you too long, but my last question is, what are some of your favorite muzzleloaders and or historic period? Because you have such a wide interest. I'm just really curious about this.
Oh no, absolutely. It's probably good you ended with this, right? Because this could dominate the whole conversation. But yeah, like I said, I really like the long hunter period. Totally fascinated by that. I didn't think I was going to be so in. I read all the Mark Baker stuff, all the Pilgrim's Journey, and really thought that was amazing, and really learned so much from that. But it wasn't until I read The Frontiersman, that Alan Eckhart book, that I was oh my gosh, what an amazing history of this area. Because being a native Texan, of course, we think we're the best state. Our Texas independence is the the coolest time or whatever.
Yep.
But reading about I had no idea how like violent and wild the Ohio River Valley was, and all the stuff with, Simon Kenton and all that kind of stuff. And, those times is pretty amazing. So I have a long rifle that I love, that's, in fact, last deer season, I ran into a bit of a problem because I was down at the deer blind with my son with a 30-30, and this buck walked up, and my son's like, "Oh, you got to shoot it. You got to shoot it." And I was like, "I can't shoot it. I have to shoot it with my long rifle. Like, I can't, like, I gotta use the right gun." So I like that gun a lot. But as you can probably tell from my Instagram, the trade guns are my favorite.
Yeah.
Northwest trade gun. I like those because of, kind of the history they had of like the trade with the natives and everything. I love the brown vests. Those have always been, just fascinating guns to me. Because they're, kind of, I guess, because they're smooth bore, you could shoot shot, you could shoot a ball. I love buck and ball is a great load for those.
Yeah.
And, they just feel so stout, it's just such an amazing long arm. And you think, like, gosh, the British Army used those for, I think, a little over 100 years.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to think about, like the same gun. I mean, I know there was variations, and the guys who are like, historians are probably throwing up in their mouth right now, but basically the same, basically the same gun for 100 years, which is an amazing thing to think about. And, I love the fur trade. I have a J.J. Henry replica. That was one of the more common guns of the fur trade. I use when I do the AMM stuff. I really like that. I don't have a tool, or a French, trade musket, which is one of the things that is on my list for sure. Cause, I actually have a lot of French in my background, and it's always upsetting to people when you dress like a Frenchman at a rendezvous. So I love doing that. Just to get the reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the trade guns and the muskets and that kind of stuff. As far as, history goes, being a Texan, being like a, red-blooded Texan, I have a couple of Texas reenactment events I do every year. So, of course, I love Texas history. I always like to tell the story about when I went to college. You could take a test to place out a Texas history. And the lady was like, "Okay, well, here's the book." And I was like, "I don't need the book. I'm fine." So I handed her the book back, and I got 100 on the test and placed out of it, But now it's like, looking back, I probably should have taken that class, because that probably would have been really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Texas history. Love just kind of the craziness of that. Love the Long Hunter period. Super fascinated with Rogers Rangers, the French and Indian War in that time period. My dad and I did a pilgrimage up to Fort Ticonderoga and Rogers Island a few years back to go check that out, because we'd never been up there before. And gosh, embarrassingly enough, I was kind of more impressed by the French guys than the British guys. I hate to say it. But yeah, I really like that time period. And eventually, I really want to try out, I've never done this, but I really want to try out, like kind of more of even like the English Civil War time with like the matchlocks and that kind of thing. I've always been really fascinated by that. So that's in my future at some point as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of the, as technology advances and we're, manufacturing things gets so much easier and easier, I think we're going to see in our lifetime kind of a real surge in the matchlock, wheel lock stuff, because people have kind of gone back in time. Everybody's kind of comfortable with what we here in America see as the traditional muzzleloader. And now we're starting to look at those early things in European muzzleloaders, and I think that'll kind of come into popularity.
Oh man, that would be so cool. I mean, I'm just such a history nerd, and my wife is a history nerd, so we're just like totally nerded out on it. But there's definitely there's just so much you can do. We have I got a guy that I camp with. I'm gonna probably see next month, who he does like a Southwestern fur trade impression.
Okay.
So he uses a, one of the Spanish, I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but it's got the really square lock to really kind of, it's got a very unique look. Escopeta. He's got an Escopeta that he uses, and that's really cool. And again, I'm working on, in my workshop, I'm working on I'm building a claymore, like a Scottish claymore sword.
Oh yeah.
That, because you've probably seen the picture too. It's the famous painting of the native guy talking to the Scottish guy during the French and Indian War. And he's got his his claymore sword and his dirk and his and his brass pistol and all that. So I was like, man, I got to build that stuff too. I mean, there's just so many cool things you can do with it. And I think like for me, I just love getting out in the woods and trying stuff out and, you know, testing things and, you know, trying different loads, different gear and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of where I am. I'm a lifelong learner and I just love trying stuff out and seeing where it leads me.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Paul. It's been fantastic. You're as cool over the phone as you are on Instagram.
Dude, hey, I'm just glad to talk to a fellow enthusiast, man. I appreciate the compliments, man. And like I said, dude, the inspiration goes both ways, you know. And I love, you know, I love seeing what everybody's working on, and you know the gear they have, and just you know helping cheer them on and have them cheer me on. And it's just been, you know, it's been cool. I've met so many great people through Instagram, and it's just been such a neat thing, and finding kind of how do we communicate in this new age and, you know, share our information and, you know, keep people inspired and excited, you know. It's been great. Hope we can hook up some point in real life, man. If you guys are ever down this way, you're always welcome to come out and stay with us or come shoot with us. And because I guarantee you that, if we can make it up to Indiana, I'll be leaning over your campfire as well too.
Oh yeah. So. Yeah, man. You're always welcome around my camp, dude.
Hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Well, I'll let you get back to the wife and the kids. Thank you again, Paul. This has been the highlight of my week.
Oh man. Thanks so much, Ethan. I really appreciate that, man. It's great talking. I've been looking forward to this too, man. So it's just great conversating and getting to know you. I appreciate it.
I'd like to thank Paul again for taking time out of his day away from his wife and his kids and the farm to talk with me about, or really just kind of geek out about muzzleloading. It was a really great conversation, and you know, just continual reminder after talking with Paul how great the people of muzzleloading are, and just how much fun reaching out and talking to him is. So I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. I seriously ask that anybody in a position like Paul is in starting the Green River Boys, you know, check that out and, you know, see, maybe not in the same capacity that Paul is doing it with his family and their friends, but, you know, maybe read through that and see if that's something that you can put some time into and try to get some young folks interested in muzzleloading. That's a real concern of, I think, just about everybody that I talk to involved in muzzleloading. And I think the Green River Boys program is definitely something that I'd like to see, you know, really spread around the country. I think, like I said, I think it's really something this country needs and really that people need right now. If you'd like to learn more about I Love Muzzleloading, you can visit ilovemuzzleloading.com. We're active on all the major social media platforms here and there, kind of posting some behind the scenes stuff from the podcast and from the videos from the road trips that we're putting on. So if you could share the show with anybody, you know, that you think might be interested in muzzleloading or needs a new podcast to listen to on the way to work, I'd really appreciate that. You can also rate us on iTunes, and that helps us reach more people too. Once again, I'm Ethan. I Love Muzzleloading, signing off again from another episode of I Love Muzzleloading. Thanks so much.